Thank you. Special legislation, Mr. Lamb.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have nothing to report, but I have two meetings scheduled. The first meeting is on May 10th at 5 o'clock, and that meeting is to discuss the downtown parking. And the second meeting is scheduled for May 15th, and that's at 5 o'clock, and that's to return to the ordinance on feeding wild animals.
Thank you. Streets and sidewalks, Ms. Hare.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no report and no future meetings scheduled.
Thank you. Emerging technologies, Mr. Rose.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no meetings for the Emerging Technology meeting, but the Emerging Technologies Advisory Committee does have their meeting on the 30th of March at 5 o'clock here at City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you. And waters and water and utilities, Mrs. Hazeltine, who is not here tonight for a report or an update. Request for council action for the Finance Committee. 23075 is budget amendments. 23076 is the McDack grant application for school resource officers. 23077 is accept funding resolution of support for NOACA for State Road. 23-078 is stormwater operation and maintenance agreement for Bat Commerce LLC. 23079 amend code 141-01 levels of authority for purchases. 23080 an MOU with the City Liberty View Medina City Development Corp. And 23081 natatorium repair project for the MCRC. Request or reports of municipal officers. We'll start with the acting mayor, Mr. Coyne.
Thank you, Mr. Shields. I have a few things this evening. The first thing I have, I just want to send out our condolences to Mr. Rose and his family for the passing of his father.
Thank you. Thank you.
I know you made it back today. Today was a tough ride from Pennsylvania, but welcome back and our condolences to you. And I just want to send out our prayers to Ms. Parnell Cavey, who was involved in an accident going down to Myrtle Beach. She's getting surgery today, and I think she's in intensive care. She was a former council representative of Ward 1. Our prayers go to her family also. And later on, during the introduction of visitors, I just want to recognize that Alternatives Pass is here to give a CIT Crisis Intervention Award to our officers here, and that'll be coming in introduction of visitors. With that, the only last thing I have to say is I just want to congratulate council for the great job they do. You guys work hard, and you need a congratulations. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Coyne. Finance Director, Mr. Durham.
Thank you. I'd like to echo Acting Mayor Coyne's condolences to Councilman Rose and prayers to the Parnell Cavey family. Other than that, I just have my usual report that the City of Medina does have an income tax, and all residents are required to file and pay. It's through RETA. RETA is Regional Income Tax Agency.
Thank you, Mr. Durham. Our Economic Development Director, Mrs. Kimberly Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no report this evening.
Thank you. Our Law Director, Mr. Huber.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no report.
Thank you. Police Chief Ed Kinney.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no report.
Thank you. Our LST Director, Mr. Toth.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through February, LST had 542 ambulance calls for the City of Medina. And for all three entities, we had 818 ambulance calls. Thank you.
Thank you. Our Service Director, Mr. Piccoli.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no report this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Worley, Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just wanted to remind residents in the southwest quadrant of the city that Ohio Edison is out handing door hanger notifications for utility pruning that will be taking place mostly in tree lawns throughout the southwest side of the city. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Worley. Our City Engineer, Mr. Patton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no report this evening.
Thank you. Our Fire Chief, Chief Walters.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no report.
Thank you. And then finally, our Planning and Community Development Director, Mr. Studden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no report.
Very good. Okay. All right. Notice communications and petitions. We have none. Unfinished business. There's no unfinished business this evening. Introduction of visitors. Members of the public will be permitted the opportunity to speak on any issue or concern which pertains to the city during the portion of the council agenda devoted to introduction of visitors. All comments shall be directed to the chair, and a reasonable time limit of approximately 5 minutes will be imposed. If there is a group, please appoint a spokesperson. Speakers should approach the front, or actually the back microphone, and state their name and address so it can be entered into the minutes. Members of the public will also be afforded the opportunity to comment on other portions of the meeting as determined by the chair or by the vote of the majority of council members present. I know we have at least one speaker, and it's my pleasure to introduce Mrs. Gail Hauk, who's a longtime friend, and we grew up together, so thank you, Gail, for being here this evening. If you want to come to the front here with the chief.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here this evening and to present Medina Police Department with the 2023 CIT Agency of the Year Award. To give you a little background as to how our decisions are made, we take a look at the police department's involvement in training, and with CIT being done annually, we can say that Medina Police has more than supported CIT training. All of your officers, I believe, except maybe some recent hires, as well as dispatch, go through the CIT program and become certified. We also look at the interaction that our crisis team at Alternative Paths has with law enforcement. More and more of the calls that we know you're responding to relate to people with mental health issues, and we find a lot of collaboration, we find consistency, and we also find that we get a lot of positive feedback from clients who interact with the officers about their interaction and how helpful the officers are and wanting to help them reach resolution to their situation. So the collaboration that we've seen has just been growing and growing through the years. CIT used to really be a lot about training, but we've really tried to move beyond just training and building more of a collaborative relationship between the mental health entities in Medina County and law enforcement overall. So we appreciate all you do to support us, and we congratulate you on this award.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Gail. I'm honored to accept this award on behalf of the men and women of the Medina Police Department. It's well-deserved recognition for these folks that come out and deal with this every day in and every day out. They're the ones that are out there providing this service to the community, executing this training that we've all received from Alternative Paths, and we thank you for that. And we're dedicated to continuing that training, and it's something that we find to be very important. It's one of the most important collaborations we have as a police department, so that we can go out and effectively address the increase, frankly, that we've had in mental health issues over the years. So we're very proud of our record with that. And again, we have dedicated all the manpower, the hours, the training to get all of our dispatchers as well as our officers trained in that. So thank you very much. And I thank the team here for all your efforts. You guys go out every day and handle these calls and engage in this. Thank you.
Thank you to our police department, and thank you, Mrs. Hauk, for attending and all the work you do on behalf of Alternative Paths. Is there anybody else who would like to speak to council this evening? If not, we'll move on to introduction and consideration of ordinances and resolutions. I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings on the following ordinances and resolutions. Ordinance 59-23, Ordinance 60-23, Ordinance 61-23, Ordinance 62-23, Ordinance 63-23, Ordinance 64-23, Ordinance 65-23, Ordinance 66-23, Ordinance 67-23, and Ordinance 68-23. No resolutions, all ordinances this evening.
Mr. President,
Mr. Simpson?
I move to accept the suspension of the following ordinances that you mentioned.
Mr. Simpson has made the motion. Do I have a second? Mr. Rose, second. Any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Ordinance 59-23, an ordinance amending Section 1 of the ordinance number 203-22 passed November 14, 2022, relative to the West Smith Reconstruction Phase 4 project.
Move to approve.
Second?
Discussion? Mr. Patty?
Thank you, Mr. President. Our West Smith Road project is ongoing. As you might remember, we approved an agreement, an MOU with the county commissioners, where the commissioners agreed to pay for 100% of the cost of the sanitary sewer replacements. During the course of the project, the county has asked to increase the scope of the amount of work they're doing. In order to do that, we do need to amend this ordinance to increase the amount available. Again, 100% of this cost is being paid for by the county.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. Any further discussion? If not, would the clerk please call the roll?
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Ordinance 5923 passes 5-0.
Thank you. Ordinance 60-23. An ordinance of the Council of the City of Medina, Ohio, certifying that when a municipal obligation was incurred, sums were lawfully appropriated in the funds to satisfy the obligation, and sufficient sums currently exist to satisfy the obligation.
Move to approve.
Second?
Discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Simpson?
the emergency clause has been requested. I move to add it at this time.
My second includes the emergency clause.
Discussion on either the emergency clause or the ordinance?
Keith?
Mr. Durham?
With your permission, I'd like to discuss this and the next ordinance together. Thank you. These two ordinances are in reference to a payment we are now making for something over at the clerk of court's office that has been in dispute for some time. In fact, the dispute has been going on so long, it's actually through the last two clerks of court. And that's the reason that now we need a then and now is that the original purchase order, which they actually had for this, lapsed over the course of this ongoing multi-year dispute. It's now been resolved and we're going to go ahead and pay this, but we need the then and now to do it. The emergency clause is because the service has long since been provided. It's just this dispute that had to get resolved.
Thank you, Mr. Durham. Any further discussion on the emergency clause or the ordinance? Would the clerk please call the roll on the emergency clause?
Simpson.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
And would the clerk please call the roll on the ordinance?
Hare.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Ordinance 6023 passes 5-0.
Thank you. Ordinance 61-23. An ordinance of the Council of the City of Medina certifying that when a municipal obligation was incurred, sums were lawfully appropriated in the funds to satisfy the obligation, and sufficient funds currently exist to satisfy the obligation.
Move to approve.
Second?
Discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Simpson?
the emergency clause has been requested. I move to add it at this time.
My second includes the emergency clause.
Thank you. And I know, Mr. Durham, as he said, this is related to the previous one, same situation with the clerk of courts from across the street in the Munich court. Is there any further discussion on the emergency clause or the ordinance? If not, would the clerk please call the roll on the emergency clause?
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
And would the clerk please call the roll on the ordinance?
Simpson.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Ordinance 6120. Oops, I'm sorry. 6123 passes 5-0.
Thank you. Ordinance 62-23, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a tenant-based rental assistance agreement with the Medina Metropolitan Housing Authority, MMHA, for the plan year 2022 Community Housing Impact and Preservation Program CHIP.
Move to approve.
Second?
Discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Simpson?
the emergency clause has been requested. I move to add it at this time.
My second includes the emergency clause.
Thank you. Mr. Dutton, could you speak to this one?
Yes, thank you. This is part of our program year 22 CHIP. It's tenant-based rental assistance program. This is a program which provides first month's rent, security deposits, and utility deposits to income-eligible households. The ordinance is for the mayor enter into a contract with Medina Metropolitan Housing Authority to implement and administer the program. The dollar amount is $16,000, including $1,600 for Metropolitan Housing's administrative costs. The emergency clause is requested as the funds are available, and we'd like to use them as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dutton. Any further discussion on the emergency clause or the ordinance? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll on the emergency clause?
Lamb.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
And would the clerk please call the roll on the ordinance?
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Ordinance 6223 passes 5-0.
Thank you. Ordinance 63-23, an ordinance authorizing the expenditure of $50,000 to Lake County Sewer Company for the street department.
Move to approve?
Second?
Discussion, Mr. Pacoli, Service Director.
Thank you, Mr. President. This ordinance will allow the Service Department to continue the efforts and repairs to our storm sewer infrastructure, specifically the repairs that require a deep excavation or that are under pavement. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the ordinance? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Hare.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Ordinance 6323 passes 5-0.
Thank you. Ordinance 64-23, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into agreement with Wichert Insurance for the city's property and general liability insurance for the period of April 1, 2023 through March 31st, 2024.
Move to approve?
Second?
Discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Simpson?
the emergency clause has been requested. I move to add it this time.
The second includes the emergency clause?
Thank you. Any discussion on the emergency clause and the ordinance? Mr. Coyne or Mr. Huber?
I guess either one of us can speak about it. I guess as every year goes by, as you know, that we go out for bids for our property and general liability coverage insurance, and it always comes at the last minute to make a determination of who we're going to choose. And Wichert Insurance, this time for a term from April 1st, 23 through March 31st, 24, we appropriated an amount to have our coverage of a premium of $210,399 not to exceed. And of course, the emergency clause is requested because it goes into effect April 1st, which is this Saturday.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the emergency clause or the ordinance? Would the clerk please call the roll on the emergency clause?
Lamb.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
And would the clerk please call the roll on the ordinance?
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Ordinance 6423 passes 5-0.
Thank you. Ordinance 65-23, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into agreement with Jackson Deacon Insurance for the city's cybersecurity liability insurance for the period of April 1, 2023 through March 31, 2024.
Move to approve?
Second?
Discussion?
Oh, sorry. I was thinking of Mr. Wetzel, so. Mr. President, the emergency clause has been requested. I move to add it at this time.
Thank
My
you.
second includes the emergency clause?
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Any discussion on the emergency clause or the ordinance? Mr. Coyne, obviously similar to the last one. but-
Yeah, this is very similar to the last one. This has to deal with, of course, the city's cybersecurity liability insurance coverage. And again, the premium on this one is about $24,000 for the coverage. And again, the emergency clause is requested because it goes into effect April 1st.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the emergency clause of the ordinance? Would the clerk please call the roll on the emergency clause?
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
And would the clerk please call the roll on the ordinance?
Simpson.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Ordinance 6523 passes 5-0.
Ordinance 66-23, an ordinance adopting a sexual abuse and molestation prevention policy for the Medina Community Rec Center.
Move to approve?
Second?
Discussion? Mr. Worley?
Thank you, Mr. President. The Rec Center has worked to develop this policy with the assistance of the law director and our insurance company in an effort to minimize our risk at the facility. The policy outlines training, reporting, hiring procedures for those individuals that have close contact with youth. We have a zero tolerance policy for incidents of child abuse, and this policy formalizes that.
I was going to say, most of these are all practices that have been in place
Right.
for many years. This puts it all together. Thank you. Any further discussion on the ordinance? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Hare.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Ordinance 6623 passes 5-0.
Thank you. Ordinance 67-23, an ordinance amending ordinance number 221-22 passed December 12, 2022, amendments to the 2023 budget.
Move to approve?
Second?
Discussion? Mr. Durham?
Thank you, Mr. President. We received a donation, and in order to expend that money, we have to have it approved by council.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll on the ordinance?
Lamb.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Ordinance 6723 passes 5-0.
Thank you. Ordinance 68-23, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept a limited warranty deed for the donation of 10.1478 acres of land, being known as permanent parcel number 028-19D-03124 from West Creek Conservancy to the city of Medina, Ohio, and to execute all related documents.
Move to approve?
Second.
Discussion? Mr. Worley?
Thank you, Mr. President. The West Creek Conservancy is a nonprofit organization that you might recall asked for us to support a grant application to Clean Ohio for funding to purchase this property on the corner of East Smith Road and Guilford Boulevard. They were awarded funding and through assistance from West Creek Conservancy, Medina County Parks, and local foundations were able to acquire the property. So this will formally allow us to accept the property. For the public, the Champion Creek Connector project that we're talking about preserves a key 10-acre parcel of critical floodplain and riparian habitats. This property has high-quality floodplain, valley wall, and upland forest. The site is dominated by almost 8 acres of mature floodplain forest that is home to northern clearwater crayfish, which is a state-listed species of concern. So preserving this floodplain forest habitat saves rare native species, ensures good water quality, links Stanberry and Maxine Nichols Park to Roscoe Ewing Park, thus enlarging our park system to further connect people to nature.
Thank you, Mr. Worley. Thank you for all your work on this, too. It's a good thing for the city here and a valuable piece of property that is now under the control of the city. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Rose?
has Mr. Huber reviewed this deed?
I have looked at this deed.
And you're all good with it?
I am.
Okay, thank you.
I know I was going to ask Mr. Coyne to talk about limited warranty deeds, but I'll,
We want to go home tonight.
We can give a lesson about these.
We want to go home tonight.
definitely. All right, any further discussion? All right, would the clerk please call the roll?
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Ordinance 6823 passes 5-0.
Council comments?
Reggie?
Mr. Simpson?
Thank you, Mr. President. Real quick, Paul, so sorry for your loss. I was glad you
Thank
was
you.
able to make it back here tonight for the meeting.
Thank you.
Hope your mom and the rest of your family is doing well.
Thank you.
Other than that, just, I always say be kind to one another, but take time if you're walking down the street and you pass somebody, you never know what's going on in somebody's life. Just a kind word of hello can make a world of difference. So other than that, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Mr. Lamb or Mr. Rose?
Thank you, Mr. Shields. First of all, I want to thank everyone for their kind words and their support during this time. I know this has been going on since 2012. I've been running back and forth to PA, and you guys have been very supportive of all of that and adjusting schedules and things like that. So my mother's relieved but sad, but it's been tough. He was 91 years old, and if you don't believe in the power of prayer, you should have listened to the priest's eulogy today, or his sermon, where he said, you know, this guy went through last rites 4 times. Okay? All right, talk about a stubborn Italian. Okay, so, all right, just stop and think about that, if the power of prayer and what it can do for you. So, thank you all again.
Mr. Lamb?
Thank you, Mr. President. My condolences to you too, Paul.
Thank you.
And your family.
Thank you.
I'm just going to speak briefly about the passing of my old friend Wes Florian, who a lot of people, I think, in Medina probably know from the school system. But in thinking about Wes, he was one of those folks who contributed to the community on so many different levels, from children in schools, as a school teacher, as a principal, as the first principal of multiple schools in Medina. Always supportive and considered what he could do to help Medina City schools. I knew Wes Florian since I was 5 years old. We grew up together on the west side of Cleveland. Our families did, about 2 blocks apart. And my father and Wes and I, starting when I was 5, went fishing in Canada together. From about when I was in kindergarten until I went in the Army, I think we went every summer for 2 weeks. We fished together. And my father was just sort of a social fisherman, and I was just a child, but Wes Florian was a fisherman who got up before breakfast and did his fishing and then came back for breakfast and then wanted to stay out all day. And then we'd come in and eat, and then he'd want to go out again at night. I knew him in a variety of different ways, but I knew him mostly just as the kind of person that contributed and wanted to be helpful and always had good things to say. And he gave a lot to this community, our community. And I guess, Denny, like when I was at Virginia Gendron's funeral, your name came up. I don't know if you know that. No. Okay, your name came up. And it was interesting because your name came up because of your admonition or your request, I guess, to be kind. And that was related to Virginia Gendron, her approach to life. And in thinking about her passing and then the passing of Wes Florian, I thought about people and all that Virginia did for this community that most folks probably never knew and never will know. And the same with Wes Florian is when some of these folks pass, they are forgotten beyond the few of us who remember them and are still alive. But their contributions aren't forgotten because most all of that lives on. With Virginia, it lives on in so many different ways, and all the things that she applied her life to, from shade trees to school board to city council and beyond that. To Wes Florian, all the things he dedicated his life to this community, to children, to administration in the school system, and the many programs that he established here. And lastly, this might not appeal to some people, but the only reason I was even in Medina was because of Wes Florian, because when I was graduating from college in Tennessee, I called him and I asked him, where should I go teach? Where should I go? And he said to me, you have to come to Medina. He said, this is the best thriving community. You have to come to Medina. And that is the only reason I came here. And so with the loss of him, it's, I don't know if this is just a rambling conversation, but it does become kind of reflective, I think, for some of us anyway, with the loss of these folks. And so my condolences to Wes and to his wife, Lee, and his brothers and sister, his family. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb, and I appreciate you mentioning I was going to bring up that Virginia service, which was just a beautiful service and a testament to all the good things she's done for this community. Denny, they did talk about you always saying to be kind, and that's how she lived her life, and it was really nice, and I'm so glad that Bill brought up Mr. Florian. He came to Medina, was principal first at Canavan Elementary School. He then had the opportunity to open up Sidney Fenn Elementary School as the first principal. Then in 1976, he was very, very proud to open up Heritage Elementary School. So I think about two people who just made life better for Medina, and that would be Virginia Gendron and Wes Florian. And Mr. Piccoli, I wanted to let you know too, Wes was, Heritage was a blue ribbon school under Mr. Florian. Medina City Schools did have one, and that was Wes's dedication. But I just think about countless number of students and people in this community that life is much better, and Medina is such a special place because of people like Virginia and Wes Florian. And Bill knew Wes his whole life. I pretty much knew Wes my whole life too, and just our lives are much better for having somebody like that, and this whole community is much luckier for having people like that. And then finally, Paul, I did want to offer my condolences. I just can't thank you enough for being here tonight. I know to have the service today and then make it back shows your dedication and commitment, and we weren't sure we were going to have 5 council members, but we didn't want to tell you that. But
Well, to that point, we were on vacation for 4 weeks back in February and March, Every time I called him, he says, "How can you be away from council that long?" He was worried about me not being here.
Yeah. But I will say, while he was on vacation, he was watching the council meetings each night on vacation, too, because he always knew what was happening here.
Texting a few
And
things.
texting us to remind us of things, too.
No, you
so-
dummy.
so. Okay, if there's nothing else, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you.